You went through the surgery, you woke up, you're told what's going on, what the stage was, all of that information to process.
So it was interesting because I have this total hysterectomy. I cannot no longer bear children. So there was a sense of grief, even though it was so quick. I was still like, oh my gosh, I have to go through chemo and do all this stuff. So much was going through my mind. I felt like, okay, I'm grateful to be alive and they're telling me I'm going to be okay. But it's hard because even family, oh, well, at least you're going to live, but you grieve your own thing, your body parts and all that. I went through a lot of thinking and basically grief, just feeling like had part of my femininity was gone.
Yes.
So that was tough.
Yes. Welcome to the Forward Think Tank podcast, a place of hope, inspiration, and education around holistic health and healing. I'm your host, Jamie Mazza, a holistic health coach, mental health advocate, and dancer. Join me as I share out-of-the-box conversations with integrative doctors, healers, and exceptional forward-thinking individuals thriving on the other side of their health challenges, as well as stories from my own personal healing journey. Thank you for tuning in. I'm so happy you're here. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This week on the Forward Think Tank, I sit down with Hayley Dubin. Hayley is a 27-year ovarian cancer survivor and thriver, and she is somebody that I was honored to sit with and have her share her story because it is one that is truly so inspiring. Hayley is a certified health coach through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, like me, and she is the founder of Revive Wellness and host of the Cancer Liberation Project podcast. As a 27-year ovarian cancer survivor, her passion is to help people overcome the physical, mental, and emotional challenges that the cancer journey can bring. Her focus is with individuals that have completed treatment for cancer, as well as those with a strong family cancer history. She helps her clients let go of the fear and take control of their health so that they can feel confident in their ability to remain cancer-free. Hayley is somebody who I connected with in the recent months. She is an advocate trained under Dr. Nasha Winter's metabolic approach. And the advocate at the time that was working with Dr. Lori, Tina Hollis, introduced the two of us. And I'm so glad that she did. Not only did I have the chance to sit and share my story on Hayley's podcast, but her and I have connected offline and shared some stories and experiences that we went through as women, as people faced with a cancer diagnosis at a young age. This conversation was one that was really introspective for me, and it was nice to hear Hayley's story being on the other side of this journey, being 27 years in remission and doing so well. She is a delight. She certainly is somebody who, as you'll hear in the episode, was shocked, like we all are, right? To receive a diagnosis so severe and something that just completely uproots and changes your life. This was in the late 90s at the time of her diagnosis. She was 29 years old. She had a 2-year-old at home. As she shares, there was a lot of stress and things going on in her life leading up to the diagnosis, but the symptoms themselves presented very quickly and wound her up in back-to-back surgeries, going through chemotherapy, everything just kind of like this domino effect happening very quickly. We talk about that experience, what she learned from it, changes that she made to her health and her lifestyle following all of that treatment, and also how she chose to expand her family, which is such a beautiful, inspiring story, one that I really admire and look up to. And so much more. She talks about how she works with patients, advice that she would give somebody who is newly diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and so much more. The conversation is so rich. It is truthful. It is so pure. And Hayley, I'm so grateful for your time to sit down and share your story. I will include all the information for how to get in touch with Hayley, where you can find her podcast, how you can learn more about her website, what it's like to work with her, all the details. If you enjoy the episode, please share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend, a colleague. Let us know what you learned from this conversation, what you found most inspiring. We all learn from sharing and from hearing other people's experiences. So know that if you are faced with a cancer diagnosis, you are not alone. There are resources. Hayley's Cancer Liberation Project podcast is a great resource to hear from incredible doctors in the cancer care world other survivors who are on the other side of their diagnosis, and so much more. Hayley, I appreciate you so much. Welcome, Hayley, to the Forward Think Tank. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Forward Think Tank. This week, I am sitting down with somebody who I have very recently connected with over the last few months. Hayley, welcome to the podcast. You're such a sweetheart. I appreciate your story. I appreciate the fact that you were willing to sit with me and also have me on your podcast. So Hayley Dubin's here today. She's a certified health coach. She is a fellow podcast host herself of her show, The Cancer Liberation Project, and also a 27-year ovarian cancer survivor. Might I say thriver? It's just been such a nice connection to have for me as somebody who is 2 years into this journey and talk to people like you who are on the other side of things and thriving in their life. So thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Oh, my pleasure. And you're such an inspiration to me, and I'm so glad we met.
Me too. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. It's an interesting thing to sit here talking to somebody who has been through it. I always try to be mindful of not making people relive their traumas, but then it's funny, like that's what we're talking about in this world. And I know it's something that you talk about in your podcast too. And I'm like, 27 years. That's incredible. If you can tell us, for people who are not familiar with you and your story, give us a little bit of background and what was going on in your life at the time. I know you're in your knees when you got your diagnosis. So tell us what was going on in your life at that time, like leading up to finding out.
Absolutely. I was 29 years old and I had a 2-year-old at the time. And I was really trying to balance motherhood, marriage, career, and not doing a very good job of it. It's very hard when you are trying to be the best at everything. I think women often are trying to do that. And I was burning the candle at both ends, and I was completely stressed out. I was a sales rep for a office supply company, and you would think, okay, it's not brain surgery, but I had this big account, and they were, back then it was a pager, and they would page me all the time if they ran out of something. And I was supposed to be working part-time because I had my kid, but it wasn't really happening that way. So yeah, I was definitely very stressed at the time. Now, in terms of symptoms, it's interesting because when I look back, I definitely had some heartburn.
Okay.
I definitely had some bloating and painful sex, but I didn't think anything of it at the time because I was trying to get pregnant and I thought my hormones were changing.
Right.
And, ovarian cancer is such a silent disease. So by the time I went to the doctor, I was in complete pain. I was actually playing tennis with my mom and my sister and another person. And I just had horrible pain on my right side. And then the next day it was even worse and I couldn't even tie my shoe.
Wow.
And so I go to the doctor and they tell me they think it's gas, and I'm thinking, I don't think it's gas. I've never had gas like this in my life. I went back the next day and they said I would go to the emergency room. Maybe it's your appendix.
Right. Okay.
So after hours and hours of being there, a resident doctor finally did an internal and he felt something, and they really didn't say much to me. They did an ultrasound and a CAT scan. And then the next day I got a call from my OBGYN and said, you need to see the oncologist in our office. So I was scared. Yeah.
Of course, at 29 years old. Also, thank you for painting the picture. I can relate in a lot of ways. And I've noticed whether or not there is a theme to people that receive a cancer diagnosis, stress tends to be a biggie, and burning the candle at both ends. It's definitely a term I've used in my own life. I've lived in my own life. I know other people have as well. Even if you said, it's a job that shouldn't have been this big, overwhelming thing, but it was maybe the way that we were interacting with that situation, or the way that our body maybe perceived. Down with somebody yesterday who doesn't have a cancer diagnosis, but has been living with multiple chronic illnesses for most of her life. And we talked a lot about the nervous system and our body feeling safe and what that actually means. And so, as you're talking about feeling stressed and burnt out, it's like, our body's in this fight or flight crisis mode. And then come to find out there was something brewing inside with, symptoms that didn't seem to present themselves for a long period of time. And then you go to the doctor, it's like, oh, no big deal. It's just gas. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to hear that you've advocated for yourself, took yourself to the ER and got to the bottom of it. But if you can remember putting yourself back in that place where you got the call from your doctor and they said, okay, it's time to see the oncologist. What was going through your mind at that young age?
Yeah, I just remember thinking I was always optimistic. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to be okay. Even though I was definitely scared because they didn't sound optimistic to me.
Right.
And I remember they made me watch a video on a hysterectomy. And I'm thinking, I'm never going
What?
to need a hysterectomy. Yes. I'm thinking, there's no way I'm getting a hysterectomy. So I kind of loosely watched it. I had to sign something saying that if it was cancer, that they can give me a total hysterectomy. And I remember I had surgery probably a few days later. They got me in pretty quickly. And I woke up to my husband's face staring at me,
Mm.
and he said, "You have to survive." And
Oh,
I later found out that I had stage 3 ovarian cancer. So it was
wow.
just so shocking.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
goodness. And for that to just cascade so quickly into surgery. Wow.
Yeah, and it spread to my colon and my appendix. So that's why it was actually stage 3C. But the
Okay.
crazy part about it is they knew I was trying to have another child and they didn't give me the total hysterectomy. They gave me a choice, but it wasn't really a choice because they said if I get everything else removed and I do the chemotherapy protocol, then I have a much higher survival rate, like 95%, because this type of cancer, it's called germ cell, and it's
Mm,
very
okay.
rare, but it happens in younger people.
Yeah.
And so they told me if I did all this that I would do okay. And then I had to have surgery 3 days later and I was in such pain. I was thinking, "Oh my god, I can't do this again."
Yeah.
So that I was upset with, even though I understand because they knew I wanted to have children. And back then I asked if they could freeze the eggs and they didn't have the technology. It was in 1998.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So at that point, you went through the surgery, you woke up, your husband, obviously you're told what's going on, what the stage was, all that information to process. No, myself and my own journey, it's like it's so much to sit with. What then happened after surgery? Or take us through any of kind of like the follow-up after and what the doctors were advising at that point.
Yeah. So you're saying after my second surgery or just after I found out that I had?
I'm sorry, after the second surgery.
Okay, so I want to backtrack because they told me I had ovarian cancer. Everyone was so scared, but the next day, pathology came back to say it was germ cell. So that
Got
was
it.
like a huge relief to everyone. It was
Okay.
interesting because I have this total hysterectomy. I cannot no longer bear children. So there's a sense of grief, even though it was so
Mm.
quick. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go through chemo and do all this stuff. So much was going through my mind. But, I felt like, okay, well, I'm
Mm.
grateful to be alive and they're telling me I'm going to be okay. But, it's hard because even family, oh, well, at least you're going to live. And, but you grieve your own thing, your body parts and all that. I went through a lot of thinking and basically grief, just not feeling like my femininity was gone. So
Yes.
that was tough.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think before you asked me that clarifying question, I don't know that my mind, I know you said they gave you the choice. And then I was like, okay, wait. Oh, okay. So you had two surgeries. Like now I'm like, okay, I'm processing that. So I apologize. Yeah. It's a lot. That's a lot of decision making. It's a lot of information to process. It is. And I find myself in my own way in that state of grief, even though my situation was different with the type of diagnosis and where things were located. Had you ever had a major surgery prior to that?
Never.
Same. And so not knowing what to expect of my body after that, you're getting used to a whole new you. And
Yeah.
then also downloading all that information into your system. And it's just like, I don't know if you remember feeling this way. It's like last week I was fine. I was living my life. You were doing your thing, playing tennis, having a little bit of pain, and then it's just like, wow, bam, it cascades so quickly.
It's so true. And you kind of bury your head like, okay, I need to do this, this, and this. I'm doing the chemo. I'm doing everything I need to be doing. And then all of a sudden you're finished with treatment. And it's like, oh my God, I cannot believe what just happened to me. It kind of hits really strong then.
Yeah. So you went through 2 surgeries and then they took you through chemotherapy.
Exactly. So I had 3 rounds of chemotherapy, and it was extremely, extremely toxic. I had to stay in the hospital for
Oh my
5
goodness.
days each time because I was hooked up to an IV so they could kind of
Monitor you and
exactly.
wow. Oh my goodness. 5
Yeah,
days. I mean,
5 days, and I remembered how I felt, just
yeah.
very
And you
weak,
had a
very
2-year-old at
nauseous.
home at the time.
Yes, exactly, exactly, and I was so grateful because I had this amazing babysitter that watched him when I was working, so
Mm,
she stayed with him a lot, and my family was so incredible, so incredible. And one thing I thought of too, just now, is that when I stayed in the hospital, I was so anxiety-ridden, so I wanted someone to sleep with me every single night I was
my
there. So it
goodness.
was 4 nights and 5 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had my husband, my sister, my dad, my aunt, like anyone.
Understandable. It's nice to have a friendly, familiar face there with you because when you're in the hospital, I mean, I found for me, I don't know if you remember the nursing staff or any of the doctors that were around. It's like, I was like, okay, nurse, like, yes, you're here to take care of me, but you're going to be my only friend while nobody's here. And God bless all the nurses in the world because so many of them have huge hearts and wonderful personalities and they're just very nurturing people. But yeah, it's a very scary place to be in, no matter whether you are the patient or you're there as a support. And then you're hooked up to all these monitors and things are beeping and you're trying to sleep and you're just like getting this medication. Like, yes, it's wow. I'm so happy to hear that you had your family by your side and you had a good support system. And, even that babysitter that you could trust to help like bridge the gap of care with your son at the time is just wonderful. We need our support system in those moments
Mm.
more than ever.
So, so true. And like you said, I mean, I give so much credit to nurses. They are so, so incredible.
For sure. For sure. So after treatment, at that point, what were the doctors saying to you? Is it like, okay, we went through the surgery, we went through the treatment, like you're good? What was the conversation, if you can recall, with the oncologist at that point?
Yeah, pretty much. I remember leaving the hospital after the third session, and they did a CAT scan and they said, "You're cancer free." And I'm thinking, okay, but I don't feel comfortable. How do I
Right?
remain cancer free?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I remember asking the oncologist all kinds of questions about how I can remain healthy. I
Mhm.
mean, even I asked about diet. I asked about if there's a support group I could go to. And there was
Right.
nothing because I was so young and the other ovarian cancer patients were older and not doing well. And they said it wouldn't be the right fit.
Goodness.
So I just, I went home, but I felt so alone, even though, like you said, I had so much support. You just feel like no one can really understand what you're going through. And I know when I talk to other survivors, they feel so similarly. You just feel like you're in it alone.
Yeah. I'm putting myself back in like the late 90s at that point in time of your diagnosis. Social media wasn't around. That's actually how I had found only 3, but 3 women across the country who had thymomas and was able to connect with them. And we're not in the same location by any means. We're all over the map, but we're able to have conversations. And I can speak to somebody directly who's been in my shoes. So I can only imagine how isolating that felt at that point in time where you're like, who can I speak to? And the doctors are just like, yeah, no, you're good. Go home. You don't want to talk to these people. Oh, they're not the right resource for you. And good for you for asking those questions. I mean, did your oncologist give any advice or recommendation? Talk to a nutritionist, anything lifestyle related that you and I both know now can make such a profound impact in somebody's healing.
Right? Nothing, nothing.
Mm.
He just said, go back to living your normal life and I'll see you in 3 months. And I was thinking, I can't go back to my normal life. I mean, that
Yeah.
hit me right away. Okay, something's not working. if I have cancer all over my body. And even though I was young, I just had this sense like something has to change.
Yeah. So at that point, did you start doing some of your own research? Were you talking to people? Like, did you start to make any changes in your nutrition or your lifestyle for yourself? How did you collect information at that point, and what did you do to help
Yeah,
yourself?
so there was, I'm sure you know who Dr. Andrew Weil is.
Yes.
And he wrote a book, 8 Weeks to Good Health. I mean, this was so long ago.
Yeah.
And it was all about the anti-inflammatory diet. And
Mhm.
I read it quickly. Now, did I change my diet right away? Not really.
Yeah.
It definitely took time,
Sure.
but I was so introspective, and I made sure I read, positive books,
Mhm.
and talked to my friends, and laughed, and
Mhm.
just all those things that made me feel good. But yes, I did end up really working on my diet later on,
Mm.
and you know and focusing on relationships. I mean, that was such a big thing because I didn't mention this before, but back in those days when my son was 2, you're so busy. My husband was working, I was working. It's like we were living together as roommates.
Mm.
And there
Yeah.
just wasn't a lot of communication. It felt like we were strangers living
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
So I knew we really had to start working on that as well. And I
Mhm.
think that's a big thing for people that are young and working and busy. They sometimes can, take each other for granted.
Definitely. That's a really good point. Uh, again, just introspective in my own journey and relating to that. I right now am living in New Jersey. My family is based in Western New York, so they're a 5-hour drive away. I mean, there are times where I joke it's like it's just me and my husband, but a lot of times it is. I have local friends who have all been amazing, and like my family has absolutely come to stay with me and visit, but I've had to lean more on my husband than ever before. And prior to that, I was working. We were often two ships passing in the night. Sometimes, because of the nature of the small business that I was in, I'd have to work on weekends. True connection time was limited. And I can only imagine having a 2-year-old in the mix where your focus is, okay, this child needs to survive. It is our responsibility to take care of this child, and we're rotating in shifts or whatever it may be. And then you're both working, and now you throw a health challenge like this into the mix, and you're working on taking better care of yourself. But I think it's such a great situation to examine, to say, okay, this is a moment to deepen our connection and relationship to each other.
And I just really took a
Yeah.
good hard look at my life. Like there were so many things. I mean, like I mentioned before, I was so stressed out.
Mm.
So I talked to him about staying home with my son Brett. And I'm glad, I'm very blessed that he said yes and he was able to do that. We were able to do that. And I just wanted to slow down. I just knew in my heart I needed to slow down. And
Mhm.
I think that's such a big thing.
Yeah, like your whole body is probably like, okay, we screamed at you until you paid attention, and now thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you for coming down a few rungs on the ladder and taking it easy,
for
because that is when we
sure.
heal, right?
There's no doubt. And, you made me think about gratitude thinking. I started a journal, and my best friend told me that Oprah writes 5 things that she's
Yeah.
grateful for every day.
Yep.
And she gave me a journal, and I'm like, that sounds great. Oprah's doing it. I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
And it was so helpful. I ended up using it sort of as a diary, how I felt. So there was some
Mm.
negativity for sure. This is a tough day. I'm in pain, or I'm just feeling sad or lonely, or whatever it is, but then always putting a positive twist on it. My son did this, or it's so beautiful out today and I went for a little walk down the driveway, or whatever.
Mhm.
So I can't stress that enough to people to try that. And even if you say you're a grateful person, writing it down, it's just so different.
Yeah.
You're just so much more mindful.
That's a good point. I often speak it into existence or think about it, but don't often write it. Gratitude, it changes the game. It changes everything. It changes our focus. I'm glad you shared that so openly and honestly. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, where to the point where it can feel fake. I'm so in your situation for that friend who brought that up to you, because it gave you something to open your mind up in a different way and shift the perspective. Because yes, like we all have days where we don't necessarily feel good all the time, especially when you're dealing with a cancer diagnosis or the aftermath of treatment or surgery. But to be able to end those thoughts with something positive is such a good reminder for our brain. I remember my dad recommending that to me after I graduated college. I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to go. I was just really like beside myself, just trying to figure out life. And he suggested something similar. Write down 3 things you're grateful for. And I was kind of like, okay, and it started out small and silly, but then you realize, and especially now for me going through this experience the last couple of years and having more life experience under my belt, it's like the little things are often what makes such a big impact. Like I went for a walk before I got ready for this call, like after I had my morning workout, just need to get outside and get into the sun.
Mm.
And it's amazing how healing, just something like that, a 10-minute walk, getting fresh air, these things that may seem so silly and trivial to some people can have a profound impact on our health and how we feel.
Absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. I did not have this in my questions, but I know this is something that you shared with me, and I think it's such a beautiful story. I know it really touched me. Thinking about my husband and I starting a family, I know you were at a point where you were looking to expand your family. So if you are open to sharing your story with doing so, do you mind sharing what happened and how your family became 3 to 4?
Absolutely. So, as I said, we were trying to have another child. I really, really wanted another child. I just felt like that would complete our family. And my husband was good with it. And we talked to his best friend's mother,
Mhm.
worked for an adoption agency, but she said it's going to take a really long time. We did want a domestic child just because we already had a biological child.
Yep.
So we just thought it would make it easier for our adopted child. And the whole thing was so incredible. This was in February when I talked to her, and in May, it was Mother's Day. And we get home from our dinner, and there's a message saying that this woman knows someone who is having a child, and are you interested? And I called her back so quick and said, yes, yes. And it was a boy, and the boy was due in July. So this was a year after I was finished with treatment. We
Mhm.
brought home this beautiful baby boy, and his name's Justin, and now he's 26, and he's so incredible, this kid, and I just feel so, so blessed.
That story, I mean, I'm trying not to overflow with tears again, because when you told me, I'm pretty sure we were just talking on the phone at that time, and I was like, gosh, like what? You got the call on Mother's Day. Like it was just something that kind of organically happened through word of mouth. Like that story is so beautiful. So thank you for sharing that, because it really, one, gave me hope. And two, I think that's so special. I love that that was able to happen for you. And it's absolutely a story that was so worthwhile for me to hear as my husband and I look to, how we're going to navigate starting a family. So thank you for that. I know I didn't include that in our initial questions, but I know it's something that we spoke about, and it's an experience that, so happy to have shared with me. So thank you for
My pleasure.
giving us a
And,
little
I just
insight
hope
here.
whatever you decide to do, that you have this beautiful family, because I know you'll be an amazing mother.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been interesting. Not to digress, but we're having conversations with other families who have adopted and like been in similar situations. And the second conversation I had after you was something very similar in just the way that it all worked out, with like someone knowing someone. These are the stories that just like give me the chills all over my body. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
I'm sure this is a fully loaded question, but how has going through this experience and now being on the other side of it, 27 years, how has this experience shaped your life? And what do you think is one of the most important lessons it's taught you?
I mean, it shaped my life in so many ways. I was always an optimistic person, but I live with such gratitude and self-love, really. At the time, I felt like my body betrayed me, and I know so many people feel like that. But it helped me to slow down and really take a magnifying glass at my life. I always say it's not to blame yourself for getting a diagnosis, but just to look at those things that you can change. Because, like I said before, something is out of harmony if you get a diagnosis like that. And so many people say, I was so healthy. I was, a runner, and I ate so well. And people were so shocked with me because I ate more vegetables than most of my friends, and I
Me
was in
too.
shape. But yet I was living with chronic stress. And when there were things from my childhood, and so many people obviously have trauma. So it's so important to look at all that, to look at all these things. And then what did I learn? I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I've always been told that you're such a nice person. And I never loved that because I thought, like, oh, people think I'm a doormat.
Right.
But I really see this spunkiness in me that, like, I'm a fighter, I'm a survivor, and I'm very determined. Yeah, that's kind of what I learned.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. And I get that too. I don't know. It's interesting to like internalize compliments sometimes. And you think like, what did you really mean by that? But the fact that you were able to see that strength within yourself and you kind of got thrown into the ring. So I've had so many people say to me, you're so strong. And I remember one of my best friends who got diagnosed with breast cancer when we were only 32. So very close to your age and honestly my age right now going through it too. She said to me, people are always telling me how strong I am. It's like, what am I supposed to do? What other choice do I have? I could sit there and I can curl up in a ball and I can feel pity for myself. And sure, we all do that sometimes, right? We're all human beings. We go through the range of emotion. But she's like, I have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I think when you do that, people who haven't been through such a challenging life experience, they look at that and they say, oh my gosh, wow, what you are going through is this like transformation of growth and trust within yourself, right? You're strengthening that inner trust.
Mm.
And the fact that you were also able to, like you said, take that magnifying lens and say, okay, stress was a big burden on my shoulders. Let's make some changes to keep it from ever coming back, or just the opportunity to really, I could be living life quite differently. And that might feel a whole lot better. It's not the easiest thing to do. I think the easiest thing to do can just be to like go back to the way things were or assume that, things can go back to normal. But it takes a lot of courage to make change.
And I think, you want some control back because you feel so out of control. Like, oh my gosh, my body, look what it did. And I feel like making those changes is so empowering because
Yes.
you're getting some of that control back.
Yes, absolutely. So what inspired you to start working in the field of cancer care? And I know that if you want to share a little bit more about that, you're one of Dr. Nasha's advocates. So tell me how you found that network and what inspired you to get into that field of work.
Well, so I recently found that it was a couple of years ago because I interviewed Dr. Nasha on my podcast, and I was just, wow, this woman is unbelievable. I relate to her so much. And I got the book, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. So that's when I decided to train to be a metabolic terrain advocate. Years back, I felt like there was no one that was helping people with cancer after they were finished with treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to fill that void. I mean, I would have loved someone to guide me on what to eat, what books to read for self development and relaxation and all those things, and someone to be in my corner. So I decided to go back to school to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to become a certified health coach. And I think you went there
I did
too.
as well. Yep.
Right. And I loved it. I just ate everything up and I just thought it was amazing, and you meet great people. And then I was coaching anybody, just to get experience.
Right.
in the health field. And then I knew like a year later, I just want to focus on cancer survivors. So I did something with Dr. Josh Axe. Like there were so many different things I did. But then when I decided to do this podcast in 2021, once I interviewed Dr. Nasha, I'm like, oh, I want to be a part of this. And I actually interviewed Janet as well, who's the education director there.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got started.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't realize when I was putting some of these questions together that you had been working with specifically the cancer patient population, which I think is amazing because I agree. We all need that support. And so many people don't know where to look. I mean, now I think things are a little bit different with programs like Nasha's, but the fact that you saw that as an opportunity to help people, and that was at what point? So how many years prior to finding Dr. Nasha's program were you doing that work?
Yeah, so I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in 2011. Stayed
Amazing.
home first, and I was just reading everything I could about nutrition and, like I said, just self-development books and all that. And then I realized there is a need for this. I was coaching until then, and then when I interviewed Dr. Nation in 2021, I decided to do it in 2022. So it's been a couple years now, and it's such incredible tools, incredible learning.
Yeah.
Because the doctors just look at the tumor, and this is all about looking at the whole person, the terrain, as you are well aware.
Absolutely. I went to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition in 2013, so I wasn't too far behind you. And so I had been working as a health coach like all these years, looking at all those aspects. When I got this diagnosis and I was, face to face with the conventional doctors, I was like kicking and screaming, you don't have what I need. Like, okay, I know there's a time and a place for those things, but I was very, very resistant. And my attitude obviously needed to soften a bit. But it was my husband who found Dr. Nasha's program and protocol and the metabolic approach. And I was like, yes, it was just a giant yes to my system because as you get, it's looking at the whole person and all these terrain areas that can be out of balance. It made so much sense to me. And I was like, this is the direction that I want to go. And there's a way that can work with conventional care as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the key. Because sometimes people think it's one way or the other. And the integrative approach is it's so important.
Yeah. So knowing more about this world of integrative cancer care in the recent years of you doing this work, are there things that you would recommend to someone who is newly faced with a diagnosis of ovarian cancer?
Yeah, I would say be comfortable with your doctors, with your healthcare team.
Yes.
And if you're not, go somewhere else. That is so important to have faith in them, to feel comfortable, to feel at ease. I know so many people who see doctors who have no bedside manner, and that just makes them in a fight or flight situation. So that's not healthy. And look on the Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health. There's plenty of doctors. I know you've seen some doctors there. Do everything you can to surround yourself with a medical team, whether it's a coach, nutritionist, advocate, because you want all sides to be looked at, just like we spoke about, just the whole person. And so that's what I recommend. And there's so many things. I mean, there's high dose vitamin C, there's HBOT, there's so many great things, but you want to make sure you're not throwing everything at it at once. Take the time, you're not in a huge hurry, like, oh my God, I got to get out now, this second, I have to do everything, because that adds more stress to you also.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you just hit on so many important things. One, I couldn't agree more with finding the right doctor and the right relationship, like somebody you can communicate with clearly. I'll never forget when my surgeon, who was not the original surgeon I thought I was going to work with, the one who I ended up working with and did my surgeries, said to me, "You're the boss. I work for you." And I was like, okay, I like you.
Right.
But I'm a very quirky person, so I really like to humanize my doctors and talk to them and, get to know them a little bit. But I think that's important because it is unfortunately or fortunately, it is a relationship that you have to maintain for a bit of time. So it should be somebody that you feel good about working with and somebody that you feel seen and heard. Absolutely. And I also love what you said about not rushing into things, because I think there's such a fear and a sense of urgency that gets put into someone's system when they hear those words. It's like, we need to act now. We need to act fast. I just want to say, like, of course, there are emergent cases, as you and I both know, like there's a time and a place where sometimes action needs to be taken very quickly. But more often than not, I do think, as you said, give yourself some time. Check out Hayley. You have had your podcast for 4 years and has such a plethora of incredible doctors, healers, other survivors. Like, take information in like that and do your homework and give yourself some time to
Absolutely.
find the right team. I love all of that advice. Thank you.
Of course.
What would you say in hindsight now, or maybe these are things, that you're still doing today, was the most important or impactful part of your healing journey personally?
It's such a good question. I think it is being true to myself. I think that I was always trying to please everyone else. I mean, even in college, I went to the business school because my sister did. Did I love it? No. And education was so important to my family and to my dad. And it was always about pleasing other people. And, I just realized I want to do things that light me up. And I want to be surrounded by people that light me up. And yeah, that's kind of it. And
But that is, I mean, that is it. I think that is it. What I heard is you want a fulfilling, meaningful life, you know, things that bring you joy, things that light you up. I'm slowly coming to realize, like, that is what life's about. It's not always about burning the candle at both ends and who's working harder, or who has the fuller plate, or who makes the most money, or who has the most whatever material possessions. It's not what gives us a full, rich life at the end of the day. So I
It's so
love the
true.
fact that those were the questions that you were asking yourself. Like, how can I light my own life up? What would bring me that joy and that spark and that
Yeah.
meaning? And I think that's incredible.
Yeah. And it's just, being, like I said, true to yourself, your authentic self. We try to pretend for others that we're something we're not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you can live your life in that truth, you're bound to be healthier.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. I think you've hit on it a bit, but I guess to wrap it up in a bow with this question, what is one piece of advice you'd give to someone faced with a similar diagnosis?
I would say, again, interview your healthcare team. Go make an appointment with 2 or 3. Don't just go with the first one.
Mm.
And really, really focus on you. And, this is the time to, I don't want to say be selfish, but when you think about yourself, when you do things for yourself, you're better for other people. So, and then another thing is to look outside yourself too and help others, because when you help others, it is so healing for yourself.
Yes, for sure. I love that advice. And it's advice that I needed to be reminded of. I'm having a lot of self-reflection through this conversation and also recent events that have come up for me. I feel like I'm at a point where every day feels like a healing day, and okay, I got to go to these appointments. I got to eat this way, take these supplements. I haven't been coaching as much over the last 2 years for good reason, of course, but it does feel like a bit of a void that I'm missing. And I think about that often. There is that quote. It's like, you want to help yourself, help someone else.
Mm.
And part of the reason why I started this podcast, I'm sure part of the reason why you started your podcast as well, let this be a resource for sharing information. And so in a way, I have to remind myself, even when it feels like I'm talking to myself sometimes, putting these episodes out, it's like people are listening, but my heart and my soul is longing to get back into coaching again, or just getting myself out there in the world and like adding more life to my days. So I think that is a really wonderful, important reminder.
Mm.
Even when you're in a challenging time, even the littlest thing, like holding the door open for someone, or
So true.
having a conversation with somebody. on the oncology floor who's there alone, or all these little things are coming to mind. It doesn't have to be this grand gesture.
Exactly. Like we put so much pressure on ourselves. Like if you're not ready to coach yet, then just like you said, talk to people on the chemo floor or whatever it is, and just be kind, and you'll probably connect with so many amazing people, and it'll be so healing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, Hayley, this has been a beautiful conversation. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the opportunity you had given me to be on your podcast. Outside of this conversation, the connection you and I had made, and just getting to know one another. And your story is one that's so powerful, admirable, so amazing to be 27 years on the other side of this and thriving. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I have one final question that I ask everybody, because you're on the Forward Think Tank. What is it that keeps you moving forward in life?
My family, connecting with others, conversations like this, learning new things. I love to learn. Gosh. And, like I said, serving others.
That's beautiful. I mean, I can certainly feel it. And the more conversations we have, the more I get to know you, how big your heart is. Everyone who's listening, check out Hayley's podcast, because I know what a labor of love it is. And the fact that you've been doing it for 4 years and you have had some incredible guests, and she's a coach herself. So if you find yourself in need of a good support system, I mean, Hayley, I have no doubt that you are probably one of the most kind-hearted, supportive advocates out there, because one, you've walked in those shoes, and two, you are just a perfect example of somebody who has lived it, reflected, made change, and now you're giving back to help other people do the same. It's really special.
Jamie, thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate this. Did you enjoy this episode? If so, I would appreciate you taking a moment to please leave a 5-star review. Every review helps visibility with this episode to reach more people. And I am on a mission to help people learn alternate resources to support themselves in their healing journey on their road to health. So please take a moment to leave a review, leave a comment. I read every single one and I respond back. And of course, the most helpful thing you can do is to share this episode. If you found it helpful, if you found it entertaining, please share it on social media, send it to a friend, a loved one, someone you think could find this helpful. It means the absolute world to me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening, and I will see you soon.